All right. Thank you guys for joining us for the Every Sunday Science of Mind class with your host, Dr. Petra. If you guys are watching us on Facebook Live and like to join us in the Zoom interactive room, please feel free to hit the link in the description above. And as always, I want to encourage you guys to all visit CSLDallas.org for all your favorite spiritual content, workshops, and fun upcoming activities. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Petra Weldis.
Good morning. Welcome to CSL Dallas Science of Mind class. And thank you, Ryan, for the smile in your voice and the steadiness of your presence. So we're not going to talk about all of this, page 76, 276, and 277. We're going to talk about the application of the principles of successful living to the ongoingness of our lives. The very last paragraph on page 277 is what we're going to focus on today, because I'm not in a great place. I got a very disturbing text this morning. And you know how when you get into that place where you're both sad and angry? Yeah, that's where I'm at. The law is subject to spirit and is its servant. We are spirit, but until we know this, we will be only half using the law, for we will not have a clear understanding to fall back upon. Treatment removes doubt and fear, lets in the realization of the presence of spirit, and is necessary while we are confronted by obstructions and obstacles. So, having been confronted this morning by more than one obstruction and obstacle, but one that was particularly devastating, right? Our principles of successful living does not guarantee a long, steady uphill climb into nirvana. It doesn't say that we won't have stones along the way or even boulders on our path, right? The point isn't that we are going to flatline our lives or somehow like nothing is ever going to happen, especially because we live in a world of other people. And we have no control over what other people are doing and what they're going to do. So what did I do? The first thing, I came in here and I was swearing, and there were people already on the call. And Ryan had to say something about that to me. I had to rearrange the space, which I wasn't expecting. We got ourselves set up, and then Ryan excused me so I could collect myself. What did I do? I locked myself out of the room. Complete panic, because the key to the room is in the room and I'm locked out, and Ryan's thinking I'm coming back any minute to get this started. So I realized at that moment that I am needing to ground myself in spiritual truth, right? Isn't that what we do? This is what principles of successful living means. It doesn't mean I come on here all smiles and pretend that everything is okay and go on with this. It means I practice my spiritual principles. So I immediately went into, there is infinite intelligence in the universe. Surely Ryan put another key somewhere besides the one that I took, that I always take every Sunday morning, right? And so while I was panicking, I was already doing affirmations. There is a key, there is a key, and there's a key box. There's a key, there's a key, there's a key box. There's a key, there's a key, there's a key box. Sure enough, went to the key box, look. The very last one was the key to this room, so I could get back in again. Then I made myself water, except that it's hot instead of cold, so I can't possibly drink it. I already have a hot coffee, right? Do you see? So I'm not in my body. And I realized I'm not in my body, so what are we going to do? Well, spirit is present, right? Isn't that what we have to know? Spirit is present right here, right where you are. Is necessary while we are confronted by obstructions and obstacles. Spirit is present. So this is what I'm clinging to this morning. Spirit is present. And I have to trust that Spirit is present in other people. I have to trust that Spirit is present right here, even in the technology, even in the keys, even in the discovery that the keys actually exist. You see, this is what it means, principles of successful living. It means in the moment, right? And I found myself going down every rabbit hole driving here, every rabbit hole of anger, and I'm going to say these things, and well, there are definitely some things I'm going to have to say. And there are definitely things that I'm going to have to do, but they have to be done and said from my deepest spiritual truth, not from this. Do you see? That's what it means. Principles of successful living. If we're gonna learn how to be an artist, we're gonna raise a child, we're gonna build a business, we're gonna heal racism, we're gonna figure out what to do with the planet. This is not a steady uphill climb into perfection. This is not like, I set my intention, everything's going to work out beautifully. It's all ease and grace. No, it's not always all ease and grace. So how do we engage until we can actually move? And it's not that life is ease and grace, right? It's that I find a center, that we find a center, a spiritual center, so that when we move and act and speak, it is from the deepest truth that we know, as opposed to reacting or blasting, right? So it's one of the reasons why I swear. I learned a long time ago that I can do enormous damage with my anger, enormous damage. But we're not going to not be angry. If you think that you're going to use spirituality never to be angry again, we're cutting off part of who we are, right? Anger, grief, and despair are the other side of love, bliss, and passion. These things go together. And if we want to cut off the negative experiences because we don't like the way they feel, we're cutting off a half of our life. So it's not the feeling that we have to cut off, right? I have to actually allow myself to allow this deep anger to come out. So what I do is I swear. I try not to swear at people when I'm speaking to them, but I do swear. And I have been known to pound my fist on the chair or the table and say, I am so angry. I'm so angry. And then I go out and I pound it into the pavement. And we have to allow ourselves to feel the feeling and let it up and out, so that behind that comes this spiritual truth, that we are spirit and that we know this, right? When we bottle up or we avoid or we suppress our negative feelings, or what we call negative feelings, right? We just exacerbate them, and they grow and they grow and they get pushed down, right? And so then when we're angry, we're not only angry about the middle, this particular moment, we're angry about all the things we've ever been angry about that we haven't allowed ourselves to be angry about, or that we've quite frankly been destructively angry about. It's never the feeling. It's always what we do with the feeling. Do you see? We don't use our spirituality to make the feeling go away. We use our spirituality to then be in integrity with our intentional actions, decisions, choices, words. I don't want to say out of the feeling, but as the feeling comes up and out, right, and we have an opportunity to feel it and to get it out in some constructive form, which means it's never at anybody, we can then deal with the situation, because we do actually have to deal with it. Spirituality is not denial. It's not whitewashing it. It's not a spiritual bypass. It's not I'm just going to love it and it's going to somehow all magically be okay. Anger gives us a backbone and a willingness to speak truth. There's a fabulous book that I want to get. I just saw yesterday on the somebody's Facebook page. It's called Praying Dangerously. Praying Dangerously. And the little excerpt that was quoted is, why do we always insist that our prayers have to be done in quiet, angelic voices? I've been saying this for years. Sometimes my prayers are emphatic. And I'm sure I've said this before. We had a member of our practitioner here years ago. She's the only person I know that has ever used a 4-letter word in a spiritual mind treatment and have it be absolutely on point, because that was her emphasis. That was her way of putting her stake in the ground. So principles of successful living, right? Using the law. We're not using the law to make our lives boring. We're not using the law so that everything always works out fine and it's ease and grace. And, ultimately that's just flat. We're using the law to help us engage with our lives, and our spirituality should give us the tools when we find ourselves in obstacles and obstructions, right? And so how long am I going to be in the swirl, and how quickly am I going to grab onto, right? So halfway here, driving halfway here, I'm thinking about, I'm going to do this science mind class. Oh yeah, right. That's going to be good. Halfway here, I'm starting to think, Spirit is present, Spirit is present, Spirit is present, Spirit is present. Even in this, there's truth. Even in this, there's truth. Even in this, there's truth. I'm absolutely guided. Right? Well, this is what it means to practice. It's not just, oh, and I want to meditate, or, oh, and I want to do a spiritual mind treatment. It's in the midst of the shit to grab for the spiritual truth, the anchor. Right? And so now when the feeling comes up, the feeling can't take me away, can't wash me into destructive expression. Do you see? It can't wash me into, I'm going to now rage at somebody. It can't wash me into, I'm going to behave inappropriately. It can't wash me into any of those, because I've anchored myself in the spiritual truth. This is what it means, principles of successful living. This is how we live. This is how we practice these things, right? And so it is necessary to have this realization of the presence of spirit while we are confronted by obstacles and obstructions. Every problem is primarily mental. Right? So what happened to me all morning is also the swirl of my thoughts about what's going on and my thoughts about what I'm going to do about it. What I'm going to do about it. I'm either going to talk to that person about it, or I'm going to go, put my head in the sand, or I'm going to go crawl into the bed and put the covers over my head. Right? That's the idea when it's primarily mental, right? It's the story we tell about what's going on. It's the way we think about it. It's that thing we get caught on, right? And you know it as well as I do. And we start obsessing about it, and and we start playing it over and over and over and over again in our minds. And we start playing what we're going to say, what we're going to do, right? And it's all kind of, yeah, usually that's what I'm about. Probably 13, probably 14, like the ugliest time of teenage years. and I get obsessed, and that is like so not in integrity with who we are and who we know ourselves to be in our spiritual place, right? And so that's the mental part of the problem. It's not that I've somehow created this problem because somebody else is doing whatever they're doing in their own lives, right? It's how I'm going to engage in it. That's what it means. Every problem is primarily mental, and the answer to our problem will be found in spiritual realization. And so that's where I go, and that's what we have to do, is to begin. What is the spiritual realization here? Well, spirit is right where I am. Spirit is the intelligence that knows what to do and what to say. And right now, I don't know what that is, so I should probably not do or say anything, which is good because I'm here being with you, right? It's great. So I'm going to wait before I do and say anything until I have found the spiritual realization about it. The spiritual realization about not the other person or even about the situation. The spiritual realization is always here. It's always here. What's my part? What's mine to do? What's mine to say? What's the spiritual realization about how I'm holding the situation? Am I holding people as broken? Am I holding people as incapable? Am I holding people in my, am I locking them into the human condition, or is the spiritual realization the recognition that, yeah, there too is spirit? And yeah, I can think of times in my life when the spiritual truth of me was nowhere visible in the way that I was behaving, nowhere visible. But it didn't mean that it wasn't there. It means it was inaccessible to me because I had cut myself off from it. I remember what that feels like, right? So I can begin to find some compassion, and I will not say or speak or do until I achieve a spiritual realization, my spiritual realization, not about what's going on out there, but my spiritual realization about what's going on in ultimate reality, right? Spirit is in fact present. Everybody's playing out. Well, let me say that again. The law is out picturing everybody's thoughts, beliefs, attitudes. That's all that's happening here. The law is manifesting exactly that. And so my spiritual realization is then, where's my grounding? Where's my truth? Do you see? And by doing this with you right now in these last 15 minutes, you have seen what I do for myself in the car, laying in bed, after a phone call, or watching something in the news, or feeling that profound upset, right? What I've just done with you here, this 15 minutes is precisely and exactly what I do with myself, right? We have to become our own spiritual coach. And that's why, of course, we have practitioners and spiritual coaches, because you go to a practitioner and they begin to show you how to do this. They ask you the right questions. They remind you of spiritual truth. And if you do that often enough, and you take enough classes, and you explore it enough, and you commit to it enough, eventually you become your own spiritual coach, right? And so in 15 minutes, I can already feel it's draining out of my body. And I can feel that in the back of my consciousness, my trust is arising, that when it's appropriate, my spiritual realization will in fact guide me. Absolutely. It is, and it's my spiritual realization, right? It's not somehow spirit's going to take over and I'm going to like channel something. No, it's my spiritual realization, because that has to come through me, as me, right? So we're not setting ourselves aside. It is what resonates with you as a spiritual truth and as a spiritual being. And it's your realization, not somebody else's, or not trying to do it like somebody else does, right? It's your spiritual realization. It's my spiritual realization. It's spirit as me, not somehow thinking that spirit is somehow going to magically fix it or magically tap me on the shoulder. No, I have to do the hard work. I have to do the work. What is my spiritual realization about this? So I have to go back and I have to dig out the spiritual truths that I know. And I have to allow that to be the guide. And I have to add a little sprinkling of psychological, stuff in there, like having fierce conversations and being willing to deal with conflict and all of those grown-up things, right? But I find all those grown-up things much easier. That's completely not true. It's not necessarily easier. I'm more willing to do those grown-up things because I know that spirit is present and that's the truth of who I am. And the truth of anybody else that I'm speaking to or working with or engaged with, it's actually true what's going on. Regardless of the condition, regardless of what I get back, regardless of how the other person receives it or hears it or does it or says it or whatever, right? I still know beyond the shadow of a doubt that that's what's going on. And so part of that for me too is then the universal perspective, right? I'm trusting, even if it doesn't look great in the moment, that we all have eternity, right? We all have eternity to become all that we are, to begin growing into our spiritual truth. And if we all have eternity, then no matter how painful or challenging a particular moment is, or a particular situation, or a particular obstacle, in eternity, it's just a step along the way. It's a step along the path, right? And everybody has their path. I have mine, and so does everybody else's. And our paths do cross, and they collide, and yeah. So what's my spiritual realization? This is what we're talking about here. This is not like just, oh, I'm going to do it because it makes me feel good, right? Our spiritual truths should become anchors for us and lifelines, and it's our parachute. And it's, when you're riding on the bus and you grab onto that handle as you're going around the corner, right? That's what our spiritual principles are. And I find that when I reach for them, they're there. And when I reach for them and they're there, and I hold on to them and I cling to them like a lifeline, then the life raft grows under me. It begins to grow under me. And then I find a place to stand and some sense of how to move forward, or sometimes how to just let it be until I'm ready to move forward. Man, we are spirit, but until we know this, we will be only half using the law. Basically, we're then using the law on autopilot, unconsciously. It's just playing out whatever we believe to be true. For we will not have an understanding to fall back on. Do you see? That's what a spiritual realization is. We use the word understanding as if it's just a purely intellectual thing, but it's not. True understanding is an embodiment. It's a lived, felt experience. That's the understanding that we have to fall back on. It lets in the realization of the presence of spirit. Our treatments do, but so does that unstructured work that we do to claw our way back into a place of equilibrium and a place of spiritual truth. And it's necessary while we are confronted by obstructions or obstacles. This is the benefit of the spiritual work, right? It gives us a solid ground when we're in free fall. It gives us solid ground. That solid ground is our spiritual realization of what's really going on and how that is present no matter what. All right, well, I think I've talked myself off the ledge. Thank you for being there and listening. I hope this modeling is of help to you. And I don't feel like I'm going to burst into tears at any second, so that's good. So I am, I'm going to see what's going on with you and how this might be helpful to you or useful to you, or comments, or whatever's going on out there. So Ryan, I'm going to turn to you. I'm going to once again thank you for your steadiness.
Yeah, you're welcome, Petra. And wow, I didn't know all that was going on before I came in. I would have been your Sunday morning Science of Mind guru today. That would have been interesting and awkward. I think what I would have done is probably sang it, so in that way we could switch it up a little bit. That would have been great. So I know there's a lot of outpouring of love towards you right now, Petra. Obviously, with all that's going on, we all experience those same things.
Mm-hmm.
And so just a lot of love being sent your way. And there are some folks who are here waiting to talk to you, but I do want to remind everybody, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, go ahead and leave your questions or comments inside of the comments of the stream, and we can bring them here into the room. And for those who are with us on Zoom, you can hit the raise your hand icon and I can call you into the room, or you can leave questions and comments inside of the chat, and that way I'll bring it aloud. I do want to make sure everybody knows when you do the comments in the chats, I keep it anonymous just so that way people can feel free to be open and share. And before I ask the first person to come into the room, I'm just going to look here at the chats and just read some of the love, right?
Please don't. It's just going to make me cry.
Well, I think it's important for you to realize that this moment, a lot of people really do care about you, and we're all here as a community. What a crazy year, right? And it's so different, but yet we're still also connected, and it really is an outpouring of love to you, Petra, for being here and being supportive no matter what you're going through, no matter what we're going through in our lives. So I know for me personally, and I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of the folks that are out there, we really appreciate this time because we can practice together sometimes. We can get into the philosophy all we want. We can read from the book, but this is the practical application, you guys. This is it in real time. And so we practice together, spiritual teacher or first person walking into the door. This is true for everybody. So
Right.
yes. All right. So enough with my ramble.
Thanks, Ryan.
I'll go ahead and I'm going to turn it over. And the first person I'm going to call into the room is Shauna. Just keep in mind, guys, that we are running a little bit close on time. So there's a few people who want to share. So please keep it to a minimum if possible. Thank you. So Shauna, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Shauna.
Good morning, Petra. Thank you for your vulnerability and courage. And I just want you to know that I got some difficult news about my brother last week. And you just magnificently answered my question. And that's all I want to tell you.
Thanks. Thanks, Shauna.
I need nothing else except to watch you be vulnerable, courageous, and so sure about what is true about us and the people we love. Thank you.
Thanks.
And my love and light with you.
Thanks, Shauna.
All right. Thank you, Shauna. And the next person I'm going to call up is my favorite, Connie Williams. Connie.
Hi, Connie.
Hi, Petra. Thank you so much for your transparency. I'm in tears too. My God, so amazingly beautiful. And I love you and I thank you. Just wanted to mention, and I mentioned this to you before, Reverend Petra, that I do a method of letting out the stress, and I practice it once a week with my friend. And it's called reevaluation counseling. We go through a process. First, we talk about what's new and good. And then we do counseling, and we each get 10 minutes, but more if we need it. We blast it out. I mean, whatever it is that has been, that we're really pissed off about, I'll just put it that way, in the last time or any time in our lives. And my friend who counsels with me just listens. She doesn't make any suggestions. She doesn't try to fix. She's a loving listener while I just let it out. And then I do that for her. And then we go through a process of coming back to present time. And I remember you said to me, it's good, but don't do it too much, you said.
Right. You don't want to do it too much.
Yeah. What I find is that with this, it's called reevaluation counseling, known as RC. A person can find it on the internet. I have a dumping ground, and I know I have a dumping ground, and it's right there once a week with my friend. And it helps me step back from, reacting in the moment sometimes, which can be very productive. That is a major thing. Plus, I literally feel the emptying out of my system from this stuff. And I feel more able to reevaluate. That's what it's about. And then come at it, on a different level, maybe talk to the person that I need to talk to or let it go or whatever it is. So that's it.
Yeah, thanks, Connie. Thanks, Connie. And there's lots of techniques you can do. That kind of a technique is fabulous. It's also the beat on the pillow technique. It's also the, go do some physical exercise technique. The whole point is to get it up and out, get those feelings up and out. Your spiritual coach, your licensed spiritual coach, your prayer partners are also really great for this. Just have to make sure that you don't jump in the hole together. Right. That's what's the most important thing, is that you don't jump in the hole together, but you have somebody who can just listen. I've talked about it before. My prayer partners and a few of my most trusted people, when I call them up and I say, this is a 2-minute whine, they know I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to be as sloppy. I'm going to curse and swear, and I'm going to attack, and I'm going to be as sloppy as I'm willing to give myself permission to be. And because I know that it's not going anywhere. I know that it's not being believed or picked up by anybody, right? It is that safe place. And when I call somebody, one of my folks, and I say it's a 5-minute whine, they know it's really, really serious. But I don't do it very often. I do think we have to be careful that we don't get into the habit of feeling like we always need to dump. As sometimes it's also just the expression of the energy itself in some form or fashion. But whatever works for us, right? Kinesthetic people, it's very active. Emotional people, you actually might need to go cry. You might actually need to go cry and not say anything at all. There might not be any words. It might just be the outpouring of tears. I cry when I'm mad. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm moved, right? It's the unfortunate thing about being a woman and having estrogen. Men, a lot of testosterone tend to get mad. They're mad when they're sad. They're mad when they're mad. They're mad when they're moved. Unfortunately, chemistry has a little bit to do with that as well, and our own innate tendencies. So find that thing and look up the thing that Connie's talking about, or get with one of our professional licensed spiritual coaches. All right, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and I'm going to go and put the link to our spiritual coaches inside of the chat so you guys can join up with them here beginning somewhere around 11:30. We do it after Sunday service. So once that's ended, then the prayer rooms are going to be open for our practitioners. So I'm not mad right now, but I was just, anyways. So I'm going to call into the room Jeff. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Petra. Yeah, I guess I'm supposed to. Yeah, so I'm the male side of this thing, and so I couldn't help but hear that that this was beyond some kind of sad or disappointing news. This was some kind of news that was from someone that's important, and I was very disappointed in them, because this is not an appropriate time for a toxic communication.
Oh, you think? I did mention that. Thank you for saying that, Jeff. I really.
Yes. So that does generate something of a protective thing that I felt, and it was. I'm glad you didn't say who it was, because that would not have been good. I
Thank
think
you for wanting to protect me, though. I appreciate it.
Jeff, I heard some things, Jeff. I heard coddlefish, fiddlesticks, fudge maker. It was out of this
that's
world.
fabulous. So yeah, I did find that the process to be enlightening. I thought you moved through it in a way that was very instructive, and man, for a while I was not sure I could hang in here with you, because I didn't know how to help. But it's not mine to do except to just tell you that I support you. And damn it, let's clear this up, because somebody's got a real problem to communicate something so sensitive and so damaged or difficult before you go into this beautiful space that you go into every Sunday morning. I'm sorry that happened, but thank you for turning it into something special. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. And so that's also really instructive, right? Well, how often we want to jump in and protect someone because we love them and care for them, and how lovely it is for Jeff to be able to express that feeling. I feel so loved. Actually, I feel very loved by all of you. And if Ryan starts reading those things out, I will become a blubbering idiot. So that would not be good. I feel very loved, very protected, and people feeling protective of me. And what an insightful thing for him to say, and that's not mine to do, right? And this is how we keep. This is how we keep it from becoming drama, right? It becomes drama when we all want to jump in there and fix it and tell people what to do and talk to each other about it. And, did you know what they did? And couldn't they have done it differently? And because we're all really good at fixing everybody else's life. And it was pretty astonishing when I realized that I needed to stop talking about other people, how they should fix their life, when I couldn't figure out how to fix my own. And so that, Jeff, was also really beautiful modeling, and how lovely. I felt the expression of that without feeling the need to say what Jeff, back off, and sometimes we feel the need to say that to somebody, right? They want to tell us what to do and what supplement we should take and why we should get the surgery or not get the surgery, or do the thing or not do the thing. And we can get a whole plethora of advice, which does nothing but overwhelm us in the moment of a situation or crisis. And so it's really surprisingly unhelpful. But to be able to express, I wish I could do something for you right now. I feel so protective and loving of you. I know it's not mine to do, but I'm here for you. Wow. That is an extraordinarily emotionally intelligent response. So Jeff, thank you for modeling that. Ryan.
All right. Thank you as well, Jeff, for sharing. As always, we'd love to hear your guys' feedback, thoughts, and questions. And so I'm going to call into the room Dennis. Dennis, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Dennis.
Good morning. Good morning. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing with us in this. And I know I can, but something was, I wasn't going to make any comment, but then I don't know, it was just something saying, do it. And you've already talked about it, just not literally. But in this situation, number one, man, my heart's kind of heavy because the empathetic side of me knows what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been there. And for me, okay, going back to a comment I made several weeks ago, a few months ago, whatever, about how oftentimes I make decisions, or I actually focus on making decisions from a spiritual standpoint, and that's often out of alignment with what the outside world would think, or quite honestly, my egoic self would want to do. And what I wanted to share is how my experience, what I've learned, in case this could help somebody, when I do turn inward like that in these situations where I'm angry and I want somebody to hurt the way that I'm hurting, and the first thing I need to do, the first step for me is I need to let go of the egoic self.
Right.
Just have to let it go. And I mean, oftentimes have to be treatment for that before I can move forward with going within and making the right decisions. And so anyway, that was it. I just wanted to share it because you've spoken about that. I know that's what you're doing. You just haven't come right out and literally said it. But that's,
but you said it for us. So thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. And I think you have some profound wisdom also in that sometimes when we go to our spiritual realization, then what we do or say or speak or how we engage is not necessarily how other people would think is normal, right? If you should cut somebody off at the knees or tell them what you think, or and on the other hand, sometimes our spirituality says, oh, we're going to love and accept them no matter what. And our spiritual realization says, no, here's the boundary. Boom, here's the boundary. Or I have to do my forgiveness work, or, whatever it is, I'm going to be loving in spite of the fact, or, right. And there's no one answer, right? It is a spiritual realization. The answer to our problems found in a spiritual realization, which is not a single, there's only one way to respond. It's always, it doesn't matter. So there's only one way to respond, right? It's our personal spiritual realization in the situation that we're in. And I think that's really important. And it may go counterintuitive, not just to worldly wisdom, but quite frankly, it may go counterintuitive to what we're most comfortable with. So if we have a tendency to be a people pleaser, our spiritual realization might be that we have to not please and hold a boundary. If we tend to be very strong with our boundaries and we're going to hold that person accountable, then it might be that our spiritual realization is that we actually have to just be a place of love. There's no one size fits all in any given situation. It is the spiritual inspiration of the moment. So Dennis, thank you so much for saying that. Ryan?
Yes, and I just want to read a couple of these out loud here to you, Petra.
Please.
One, it says, thank you for modeling the most appropriate way to respond to any situation. I respect, love, and appreciate you. And another one here says, Petra, your authentically is so appreciated. Being authentic is so appreciated. And it's brave that you share it on such a public forum, because it's real life. And I'm gonna have snap as a sound clippets for days this week. So I want you guys to make sure to tune into Facebook, because I'm gonna have lots of ammunition. All right. And it makes so much more likely that a person will understand these principles, because when you see it in real life, I was thinking to myself, oh man, I've had those situations happen all the time. And it's funny, because when you were bringing up how men deal with it, I as a man, I can only speak for myself, find myself dealing in that way. Instead of the emotional, I was more taught to get aggressive,
Yes.
more energy escalated into the
Right.
situation, try to control and overpower it.
Right.
And it's so interesting, because when you put it in perspective, when you're in the heat of the moment and that's your natural reaction, and then after a while you're sitting there thinking, oh wow, that was a moment. How can I stop myself from going to that level? Right? Because it's the level that you realize only in retrospect,
Yes.
that you're sitting there going, that was too far off the cliff. I don't like that. That experience was not what I want to see. And then it's the mental manipulation, the own mental manipulation, using spiritual practices and principles, because it's coming from a place of source. It's coming from a place of love. And so when we can learn to tap into it, we can start to calm that inner beast, as you'd call it, right? But that beast has to live.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But we have to remember that we're the ones directing it, right? And that we're the ones that are providing a spiritual ground from which to engage. And I think you say something really important, Ryan, right? It is that escalation that we end up then having to make amends, because we've taken it too far and we've actually done damage in our own response. And quite frankly, we've just made it worse, right? And I think this is why in recovery circles, I love the idea of restraint of pen and tongue. So don't fire off that text. Don't fire off that email. Don't pick up the phone. Don't get in that other person's face, right? Restraint of pen and tongue is what allows us to have our feelings in some appropriate way, and then I think of it as that when the feelings can come up and out in a safe way, I've undammed the flow of spiritual inspiration, right? As long as they're all swirling in there, the feelings and the thoughts are all swirling in there, there's no room for spiritual realization. And so we do want to be able to get them up and out in a safe way. And then there's that opportunity for spiritual realization to actually know how we want to engage. And we may engage very forcefully and strongly and powerfully, or we may engage very lovingly. And well, these aren't mutually exclusive. I shouldn't say it quite that way, but you know what I mean. Sometimes it's letting things be that they are. Sometimes it's expressing acceptance. Sometimes it's expressing this is not okay. You can't do this. Sometimes it's we have to negotiate something here, right? But now all of that actually comes from a centered place, which actually is a place of much more strength than that aggressive place, Ryan, that you're talking about, or the sort of weepy place that we can go to that becomes weepy, and then, you know, we feel emotionally overloaded, and we just want to go run away and hide. So yeah, it's all very interesting, isn't it? And if we can, and you know, and as in all things, our spirituality begins with that ability to reflect, self-reflect. What's going on with me right now? And that can be challenging in the heat of the moment, right? Which is why we have restraint of pen and tongue. And we don't respond in the heat of the moment. And when we do, we try to de-escalate it ourselves as best we can. So yeah, it's all this grown-up spirituality that we're trying to do, right?
Yeah, and as we close out, one last note I'd like to make on that as well too is that some of the things that keep us in that are our resentments, right? Because as we go to those extreme levels, we create situations within our lives that then we reflect on and then hold that story. And those stories then become the boundaries in which we express ourselves. So we get stuck in the same situation, think the same thing's going to happen, and we become these creatures of habit. So it's also important to look at that perspective as well too, is how are we dealing with these stories? How are we bringing up those emotions so we can actually get past those stories, but in a safe and healthy way, right?
Right. That's exactly right. And I think that you're saying something really important, Ryan, right? I have seen, unfortunately, a lot of people who have done a lot of spiritual work, but they haven't done the emotional intelligence work, which to me is inextricably linked with true spiritual work. But just to think about, you know, God is everything and I'm a part of it, and isn't it lovely and ease and grace, and I'm just going to float along without doing the emotional intelligence work is only half of the spirituality, because that is that self-awareness and self-reflection and as you said, resentment, anger, guilt, shame, grief, all those unhealed, unworked emotions. Right, our spirituality without working with those, it isn't going to be a spirituality that will allow us to work with our being confronted by obstructions and obstacles. And there won't be space for a spiritual realization because we won't understand that our problems are primarily mental. Exactly, Ryan, as you described, right? Whether it's resentment or any other thing, right? It's a mental, because it's a story we tell, we get caught in it, we keep retelling it. Every time something that even looks close to it, it gets activated again, and we're off and running. So thank you, really, thank you for sharing that. So, and if you want to learn about breaking habits, Chris Miller and I have a workshop starting next week on breaking habits, 3 weeks on breaking mental habits that also then show up as physical behaviors, whether it's eating or food or resentment, right? Whether it's physical behaviors or emotional behaviors. We have a great class, that 3-week class that you can sign up for. And also I'm starting an Old Testament Bible class. So if you haven't taken it or you want to retake it, that's starting next week. So I'm pretty excited about it. And then we'll do the New Testament, metaphysics, New Testament in the fall. So there are some things that we pull out of the Hebrew Testament. There's some great mystical truth in there. And there's also some stuff that we should let go of, that we should recognize where that all comes from and let go of it. So if you're ready to explore that, sign up for the Bible class as well. All right, so Ryan, I think we're ready to close, yes?
Yes, we are. It was a very charged day today, and we're moving and keeping with that same loving energy and going into the Sunday celebration. So please stay tuned here on Facebook and join us. And also we'll be broadcasting it later on YouTube, and I'll have chock full of snippets all week long. So please keep in touch on social media.
And so Karen is going to be doing a fabulous conversation on moving on up and with money. And we have special guest Karen Drucker. So join us for the celebration in a little bit. Have a beautiful day. Bye for now.